So I'm the person that stands between you and the bar. Is that the billing here? So, hi, Steve Aubin. How are you? Good. It's fun to be here in this room. I've never been to a think tank event, so it's a first for everything. So, right? No, exactly. This is kind of a kickoff. So, do we have any Vietnam veterans here in the room? We got one here. I saw Alan earlier, and I thanked him for his service. Today is Recognition Day for all Vietnam veterans. So first of all, just a big thank you for letting me get out of the Pentagon. I spend quite a bit of time there. I think since July 19th, that puts me at about eight months, and I think most of the weekends I've spent there. I like it there. This is like one of the best jobs I've ever had. So I thought working at Boeing was the best ever. Getting up and beating Airbus every day, and it's just we have this friendly rivalry. But it's a wonderful industry. You have wonderful people, and I thought it is probably the best place ever to work. And then I discovered the Pentagon, and with the greatest sincerity, it is really the best job I've ever had. Just reflecting back on the past 8 months, and it's gone by pretty quickly. The way I calibrate some of that is when it comes to having a really strong team, and I've been on a lot of really strong teams. One of the best teams I've ever been on, and it's a real pleasure to serve and work for Secretary Mattis. I'd also say one of the things that has surprised me there is the amount of cohesion. I mean, people, it is a very respectful environment. People trust each other quite a bit. And the amazing thing is you hear so much about the bureaucracy and how slow things are, but over the fall, while we were developing the National Defense Strategy and working on the budget, we did, 3 hurricanes, North Korea, Syria, Afghanistan. I mean, you kind of walk down the list, and it's a very dynamic environment. And in the midst of all of that, people remained extraordinarily focused. Appreciate the comment on the resume. When I think about my role there at the Pentagon, it ties into, I think, what you've been talking about today. Most of my experience has been introducing change at scale. And the nice thing about working in a business where it's complex engineered products that can't fail, and Boeing is the largest manufacturing exporter of the United States, you're used to working at scale and working fast. So, coming to the Pentagon, it feels like the kind of the background in terms of business reforms, engineering, technology development, getting cost out of things that are, in production. It's the background and the experiences I feel well suited to doing that. Which leads me to my opening comment, which is I think I'm at the wrong event. Because it was how do we evolve the future force? And I'm part of the department that gets stuff done. I was going to use another word, but we're really about getting stuff done. So I think when it comes to evolution, we're going to change that word to revolution. I'll talk for a few minutes about some thoughts there, but what I thought I'd do is maybe take you inside the locker room, if you will. Like, what have we been doing? Where are we focused right now? So if you think about the National Defense Strategy, and that's really I'll do a test here. How many of you have read the National Defense Strategy? Good. I have a $20 bill if someone here can tell me what Secretary Mattis's 3 lines of effort are.
Technology, building the joint, enhancing the joint force, and streamlining and modernizing the force.
2 out of 3. Anybody else?
Legality, allies and partners, and business reform.
You want to pass that gentleman? The secretary made us all get tattoos so that we would never forget. The thing that we've been doing, and the reason I started out with get stuff done is that we rolled the strategy out in January, and that's behind us. February was deliver a budget over to OMB, and we did that. March has really been about, okay, what are we doing to execute? It's really about execution. I think that's been the theme of today. It's many of these issues, problems, ideas, solutions have been either around for a while or they're emerging, and we need to embrace them in a very risk-balanced way. So if you asked me what we're doing in the month of March and where our priorities are, they're in three areas. No kidding, move the needle on readiness. We expect a year from now that Congress will ask us for a receipt on the money. We said we needed money for readiness. We want a receipt and see that all the things you said you needed in order to improve the readiness of the force, you were able to do. Pretty straightforward, but we're very down and in, and if we had more time, I could kind of walk you to, where that is. I'm not concerned about spending the money that we have in the period of time, the balance of the 6 months. Story for another day, but that's how focused we are in making sure that we're not just spending the money, but spending it on the right things so we move that needle. The second area is in de-risking our programs of record. So when I say de-risking, it means just make sure that we execute flawlessly. And the reason why that's so important is, one, we want to complete those, and we want to deliver either ahead of schedule or under budget. But the most important thing is we don't want it to impact modernization. Our real focus is how do we accelerate modernization? And probably, as you work through today, here's all those really good ideas. The modernization is how do you get those good ideas to scale? And so those are the kind of three major efforts when we talk programmatics. Then there's this big effort ongoing concurrently, which is reform. And in another forum, we can talk about that. It is not as sexy as evolving the future force. It is how we're going to pay to evolve the future force. And I think it'll be a down payment on the things that we can do going forward. A lot of opportunity when it comes to reform. I'm going to do two non sequiturs because this came up. I had a few folks monitoring the meeting. It's really great. In the Department of Defense, you can monitor all sorts of things. So we had people monitoring the meeting today, and comment came up, we sure wish the department would, I'm paraphrasing, but take some real risk on artificial intelligence. When are we going to kind of speed things up there? Was that your question, Tony, or comment? Okay, all right, good. The thing I would share with this group, and it's a little bit why folks like Mike Griffin, who's a specialist in space, who's going to help us on hypersonics. We recruited this gentleman by the name of Dana Deasy, who was the CIO at J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. He retired in November, and he was going to have this really great retirement and spend all sorts of time with his wife and go to the summer home that he's never used. And he managed 43,000 IT professionals and put cybersecurity and a whole host of other really advanced technologies from a computing standpoint in place. And he'll be joining us the first part of May. So when we talk about risk, I think our risk tolerance is going to go higher, but I think it's not because we're going to take on things that are riskier. I think we're going to have people who've managed risk and demonstrated at scale how to deal with risk. So I'm pretty excited about what we're going to do at the Department of Defense when it comes to IT modernization, what we're going to do in terms of business intelligence, in terms of just intelligence. And again, on this non sequitur, you can imagine, those of you who have worked in really big companies, when you read that there are 500 and some cloud projects going on in the 15th largest economy in the world, that's not a surprise. The fact that we're going to get our arms around it, that will happen. In something that's as large as the 15th largest economy in the world, doesn't happen overnight. So herding things up, we're attracting more and more people to join the team. The other one, and Alan, this came about when we were in the other room, and when most of us grew up, all great ideas came out of the Department of Defense, and on the commercial side, you leveraged the technology. And we clearly recognize in the Department of Defense there are great ideas in the commercial world, and the commercial world is investing considerably more amounts of money in terms of R&D. So our version of R&D is to rip off and deploy. So it is that simple. Okay, so the mindset has always been we'll grow it ourselves. It'll be organic. I think what you'll see with the team that's in place is there's a lot more. How do we leverage things that have already been done? And then it also gives us a chance to bring new companies, new ideas, and expand the people that we work with in the Department of Defense. I'd say kind of if we go back and talk a little bit about the National Defense Strategy and why it's very important to all of us is when you think about an organization as large as the Defense Department, it's how you move quickly in the same direction and evolve at scale. That's really the major thinking around the National Defense Strategy. It isn't the things that we're going to do and the priorities that are being set are extremely important. It's the fact that we're all going to work to it. It is the lubrication that allows us to evolve more quickly. When you don't have a common lexicon, when you don't have a common understanding of the priorities, when you don't work to a set of goals and targets, then you go slow. And then the bureaucracy has to be utilized so you can make sure that people don't get out ahead of the wrong groups, and all of a sudden structure and org charts have a lot of importance. That's what the National Defense Strategy allows us to dismantle. The other thing about the National Defense Strategy is in some ways, and this is my own translation of it, it is the manifestation of a number of years of the NDAA. So when Congress, we talk about, when I was going through the confirmation process, which is something, if any of you have a chance to go through, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. The Congress was quite clear. You're not working with us closely enough. And part of what we did in the National Defense Strategy was really look at those major muscle movements, whether it was how AT&L was organized, what do we think about affordability, all of those things you'll see really are integrated into the NDS. Now, when 1,700 pages of NDA a language gets sent over, we're not going to put all 1,700 pages in there, but the essence of many of the reforms and the changes, whether they're programmatic or in terms of affordability, those are reflected in the NDS. And while I'm on the subject of Congress, huge thanks goes out to Congress. I mean, you think about 6 months ago, if, inside the building, people were saying lifting the BCA caps would be extraordinarily difficult. I mean, being new, I had no idea how big these lifts were, but pretty much the consensus was it won't happen. And if it does happen, we won't get the money we need in order to really start working on modernization. And it happened. That's why now the big emphasis is on, okay, show us that you're going to produce results, and also show us that there's real accountability for achieving those results. And when you talk execution, we really talk results and accountability. There's an element here that I would throw out, because I'm new to the think tank circuit here, where we could use help from the people that really kind of work in this part of Washington, D.C. When I think of the help that can be provided, I'll give you an example. It's one of many, and maybe at some other time I can get invited back and share the laundry list, but it won't surprise you. It surprised me, but it won't surprise you that have worked here. The Pentagon's never been audited. I was like, the 15th largest economy in the world hasn't been audited? That's curious. The work and the help that we need is the thinking that goes around, well, now that you've completed the audit, here's how you should focus on using the results most effectively. So if we said we wanted to evolve in the future, the big brain trust would say, that's really interesting. Now that you have properly accounted for the Air Force Academy, let it go. These are the areas where having cost visibility, data accuracy can give you real leverage either in saving costs or making better decisions. Here's how you should organize to do, business intelligence or big data analytics. And I could use a lot of that help, and I read a lot of the work that's produced by this body. And some focused recommendations and quite frankly, debates. These kinds of forums would go a long ways in helping us leverage off of this significant effort. Michael, do you guys know David Norquist? So David, it's interesting. He has this title. It's called Comptroller. And so we sat down and, you do this normal thing in industry where you agree on results and outcome and performance. So his assignment is we're going to take Comptroller off his business card and we're going to make him the CFO. Because we're less interested in how well he expends the money. We want him to be focused on what are we getting for it. So a lot of this, since we're going to do the audit, since we're going to move to the cloud and harmonize our financial management systems across DoD, we need somebody who can hold, like every place else, the people that spend the money accountable for the results. But I'm pretty excited. David's jacked up about getting a new job title, and I'm pretty encouraged about how that'll shake out. Maybe just because there's some real good industry partners here. It's fun being on the other side of the equation now because we can dispense with things that are impediments. There's a lot of things. I mean, I could, I'll just run out of time over the Pentagon working on acquisition reform. What we have to do is get output, and where we're working on things, really tailor fixes. But I would, and looking back at Mike Petters, I've been thinking quite a bit about all the things we have to do. There's this concurrency of work, and so there's like this impedance mismatch right now because you have this like incredible industrial base, and we've got our signals off. And they're not off in a bad way, but it's like the feedback loops. I look at what people want to do on readiness, or I spent great day down at Newport News, and we were going through, how do we take the tools and the investments that are being made in the shipbuilding industry and scale them up, and how do we leverage some of the productivity gains and thinking that have occurred in automotive and aerospace and inject them into the shipbuilding business. And we're not getting enough time with our industrial partners or the industrial base to really get after those things that, quite frankly, take changes on the behalf of the government to unlock the trapped productivity in the industrial base, or to find some way to share the risk, because it can't be a trap in terms of risk. Since I know the bar is open now, I thought maybe I would close by, it's really great to be in Washington, D.C. Folks in the Department of Defense, we're going to get stuff done. So we'll probably, you'll see a few of us with, T-shirts or buttons or coins that say GSD. Some of them might say GSDN, which means now. And look forward to coming back and addressing you earlier in the day with a little bit more time. So thank you very much.